Hey friends! Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community that is all about doing the inner work to live an aligned and, dare I say, happy life. I'm your host, spiritual guide and intuitive, Angel Kelly, and I'm here to share my teachings along with messages passed on to me from higher consciousness. I've also got incredible guests in store to help you go down all those spiritual rabbit holes. So let's go! Welcome to the club! Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining for part 2 with Michelle Larson. Last week, in case you missed it, we talked about aliens, abductions, encounters, galactic federation, all the things. And this week, we're going to be focusing in on starseeds. So get ready. I hope you enjoy. For a lot of listeners, this may be the first time they're hearing the word starseed. So I think if you're open to it, it would be helpful to just highlight some of the big or main or common star nations that souls have come here from. And we could talk a bit about those. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great. It's funny, it reminds me of like Africa, like the big five.
Yeah.
It's like we're going to see the big five. And
Yeah,
it's
let's
like,
talk about the big five.
but it's also, I mean, it's relevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a lot of people really know of or know a lot about like the Pleiadians. So
Right.
they're very humanoid, which humanoid just means they look human, but a little not human. So like they're kind of human, kind of not. And they're from a star system very close to us. So it's like they really have a lot of karma from like Earth because they've been, it's kind of like the neighboring country to a country at war that doesn't help anyone. It's kind of like that sort of energy in karma. They also, what happens here really matters what happens to them because like they're kind of next in the pecking order if we don't get our things figured out.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
Right. So the Pleiadians are a big one. A lot of people will channel them, will talk to them. They're pretty close. I believe in like a frequency or dimensional sense, like they're actually pretty close to us dimensionally.
Okay.
So also why we can access them easier because it doesn't take like a huge
Leap.
conduit or electrical charge to really get to that sort of level. Another pretty common one is the Greys. So we talked about them. They're like, when you think of alien, you're thinking of a Grey.
Okay.
Small, big bulby heads, skinny bodies, weird lanky arms. Like that's a Grey alien. Within the Greys are many different species. Like there are tall, skinny ones, there are short ones, there are like
Just like
there's so
humans have
many.
many different, yes. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. And that's always one thing I love to share when I talk about different ET races is kind of like just like we have on Earth, there's going to be many different features to people who come from China, people who come from Japan, people who come from India, like America, Canada, Alaska, right? Even within the provinces and the states, like we all have different attributes and we're right, even more, you're like, you're from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're from Ontario. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah. Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, actually, you're all still Canadian, but you're very different. So there are individual markers, individual thinkings of it, and there are some that are very good, and there are some that are very bad, and there's some that are all the way in between.
Okay.
Just like, it's like, sorry, Germany, but this is my best example for it. But it's like you think of Germans, and you have like your Nazi Germans, and then you have like your normal Germans, right? And everywhere in between, it's like we're not going to label them all terrible
Right.
or all good because history. But
And so I sense you're bringing that up about the Greys because folks generally associate the Greys with the negative. So, the negative community of Greys, for lack of a better word, because you had mentioned earlier that abductions are generally it's very commonly going to be the Greys. Why is that?
they're really good at it.
Oh.
They're fast, they're efficient, they could freeze things. Like they're just they have done it so much, and they're very much the Greys love timelines, and they love like using jump gates and portals and different like ways to traverse different timelines. So they're just the best in the business. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like you want a bad job done, you call the mafia. Like that,
Right.
it's just kind of like they've just got that rap going for
Okay.
them,
Okay.
and mainly from experience, really.
And I noticed in watching all these Netflix specials that it must be grays because they're all like kind of describing the same, for the most part,
Mm.
classic alien. And so are they like more like 3D? Are they more third density rather than fourth? Like is that why like we see them more or they come here more?
Mm. They are of a it's actually a great, like I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna like fact check myself on this one, but they are, I believe, of a lower consciousness, like not lower than us, but in this realm of ETs. Now, that's not to say all of them or all of the species of greys, because there's like Orion greys, and there's like even different star system
Mm-hmm.
greys that are quite
Mm-hmm.
advanced, really. But overall, the kind of mentality of grays is hive thinking. So oftentimes they don't really think for themselves, and they really take a lot of
I
orders.
see.
So that it kind of helps if you like have a hired gun and they don't have anything going on about it except what orders do I have.
Mm,
They're easier to work with, but that also is kind of lower consciousness.
right.
And equally, they have genetically modified themselves out of emotions, which is why they're so skinny. They have no emotional body.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So don't
Alien's great.
don't modify yourselves too much, people, because that's that's what could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have our Pleiadians who are pretty close to us. We have the Greys who we see a lot. It's in a lot of stories, whether it be because they have a lot of agendas, because they do, or because they're hired, because they are,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? Another one that we see that often get a bad rap, and rightfully so, are the reptilians or like the draconians. So they are like reptiles, so reptilian. They're big. They're created for or made for war. They're military minded, military species, a lot of destruction, a lot of intense. They're extremely intense. Even the good ones, the nice ones, the benevolent ones are very
Mm,
intense because that's it's just the way that they were literally created to be. Um, and they have gone about the universes just destroying planets
yeah.
for millennia, like for a very long time.
Right. Like, wasn't it even Lyra that got destroyed by the? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's been a ton of wars inside of that, and they're really to blame for it. So it's kind of like when you think of any of these sci-fi movies and things of these species that come through and are trying to destroy planets, and they're trying to save them from it. It's like that's kind of what the reptilians have been and done.
Right.
Again,
Right.
not all of them, but at large, most of them are not very friendly. They can project images into your mind and like make you feel things. So like again, that intensity aspect, but they also can like show you and then like kind of manipulate telepathically like what you're feeling and
Oh wow.
thinking. They're yeah, they're super intense. The Lyrans, since you brought it up, they are like our they're so fun. They're very much they're a highly evolved race. They're like our lions, our feline people. Like they're just so majestic and strong and wise. Like really, when we think of lions and any movie that has lions in it, and you're just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like you're just royalty and beauty and all of the things. Like Lyrans are so much fun to be around and to be with. Like they're
They're the
fantastic.
OGs, aren't
Um,
they?
yeah, I
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah, pretty much, which makes sense with like the royal heritage. You know, you kind of think of
Totally.
like they have a stature about
Mm,
them. Another one would be like
mm,
Syrians. So you have a few different planets in Sirius, like A, B, and C, and depending on which type, which place, which thing, you can be kind of a humanoid Syrian, so like bald, gold cape, um, lots of gold. They like gold and sand and sun. Or you can have kind of your like aquatic type. I think one of their planets is water based, so you get like your whales, your dolphins are very tied into the Syrian lineage. So there's always talk about like, are there aliens living in the ocean? It's like, well, is that whale a starseed? I don't know, but like we're deeply connected through the Syrian lineage, through the whales, through the dolphins, through all of those like beautiful
hmm
creatures.
hmm
So,
I read somewhere that whales and dolphins and so on were operating at fourth density, like higher density than us.
mm,
So it checks out.
yeah, yeah, I would believe that to be true. They're just like yeah, and even when you're in there, like there's so many theories around like why can't we touch dolphins? Why can't we be with dolphins except the ones in, like the you can touch the dolphin
Hmm
pool? It's like why is that? What are the codes? What are the frequencies that really they're giving?
Yeah,
So there's some like, is that a cosmic disclosure? Like we shall find
right.
out.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Pleiadians, Greys, Reptilians, Lyrians, and Syrians.
Yep.
Any other ones you want to highlight?
Hmm. I'm like, who am I missing? I mean, there's so
Right.
many. Like you can do so much research. Some is helpful, some is not super helpful. You have like Andromedian or Andromeda ones. They're a very highly evolved species, but they almost evolved too quickly that they destroyed their planet.
Oh, oh.
So like in some of the Andromedan starseeds that I have seen, like reincarnate on here, it's like they actually have a lot of karma to pay forward to teach the Earth how to keep the planet versus just destroy it because we keep
Oh,
evolving.
beautiful. Oh, that,
So that's always been kind of fun where I'm like, oh, like I love to see that.
yeah. Yeah. And then what star nation is your soul from, Michelle?
I am a blue avian.
Oh, say more.
So the avians in and of themselves don't really get involved. We don't have a home planet because it's been destroyed in wars. So who is left of us is really just traveling through the universe, through the different galaxies to just spread like the
Hmm
light and keep things moving prosperous. But yeah, we don't typically get involved. We see like a higher
hmm
level
hmm
and then send down, but I guess I couldn't take it anymore and I came to
I was
Earth.
gonna say you're getting
What was
involved.
I thinking?
Pretty involved.
Big time. Yeah.
And have you connected with any of your like blue avian ancestors or family from soul family from past lives?
hmm Yeah. I actually have like a brother from my soul family who will come in when I'm doing like really deep like interference or entity removal work.
Oh, great.
So he's like very much like comes in, guides me there, or if I'm in really big like lows for whatever reason, like just is just like delivering like the medicine that
Yeah,
I need.
keeps you high vibration. Hmm
Mm-hmm. And then I've had other members like come in and out as needed, but he's like a constant where I'm like, oh,
hmm
thank you, brother.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, my star nation, well, they're called the pink ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they might be like a subset of Cassiopean pink ones.
Mm-hmm.
But
I love
they don't
Cassiopean.
have physical form, so they're like I can't remember fourth, fifth density, but um, yeah, the times that I've connected to or channeled them feels very, yeah, it's very like home and like family and just like a higher vibration that I know very well, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if only I could stay connected to it, but I'm here. Um,
Yeah, the Cassiopeans they're fun because they tend to, since they don't really take form, it's like a light show. Like so they may come in kind of like a tree spirit or a wisp or an orb.
oh my,
That's very similarly to how they'll come through. And it's like a freaking light show because it's just so like just blasting you with light
I'm having
codes.
like
Like,
a full circle moment right here. Thank you for that. When I first had my
hmm
awakening, Michelle, I would see lights, and I interpreted
oh,
them to be angels. But now I'm like, oh, because like angels was like my entry point. But now I'm like, oh my
hmm
gosh. Anyway, I'm gonna sit
and
with
and
that.
really and really truly like angels and star family, like could they be the same thing? Like very possibly
Totally. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Jesus was a star seed,
Right.
right? It's
Yeah.
like he's dropping wisdom, doing all the
Yeah, it's
things,
like
but
we're like categorizing angels, guides, ancestors, star seeds, but like there's so much one and the same,
mhm.
and we're just humans trying to make sense of what we're experiencing.
Which is often we get like um kind of like cutely laughed at. Like it's not like a haha, this is like bad, but it's just like kind of like when you laugh at like kids where you're like this is so cute. But like how we try to
Right.
box everything in and try to have like the hierarchical understanding of the universe. Who's higher, who's lower? And they're like, oh, it's
Yeah.
just density. It's just consciousness. Like the wall is blue and the wall is pink. That's it. Like there's no good, bad, or other. Like they're like, why do humans try to make everything so
Yeah,
rigid?
we do.
Because the mind and the ego trap just wants to
Yeah,
grip.
wants to grip, understand so that I can feel safe and control.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here. I'm here and I'm doing it. Okay, so when you
Mhm.
do readings for folks, so obviously you do things where you are focusing on removing entities, removing maybe any bad
Mhm.
energy or trauma that they experience through ET interference. But then also you read starseed children. Is that fair to say?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
in doing so, are you seeing like do you see all the above that we've just talked about and more, or do you see like are you seeing more of one star nation coming through for a particular reason?
It's it's really all
Yeah.
over the place. It kind of just depends on like that unique blueprint, unique frequency. Sometimes the children are very specific, like don't tell my parents where I'm from because it will trap them into something, and almost like that
Mm,
projection of like you have to be this way or it I found out you were Syrian, so we need to get you in the sun and move to the beach. And they're like, no, it's okay. I don't need to live with
interesting.
whales. You know, it's like so sometimes they're very like, no, don't tell them. And sometimes they're like, they need to know because it awakens or enlivens
Hmm.
something within
Hmm.
them. So, but it's really variable. Like it's kind of, there's a big surge of like hybrid children that
What
are
do you mean?
coming through, which are like, so hybrid children, hybrid starseed children are mixes of different starseed races. So it'd be like you could be like a Lyran
I
Syrian
see.
or like a
Right.
gray
Got it.
Pleiadian or
Mix.
something like that, right? Like your different meddled mix. And some of that is to try and bring more harmony to this planet because if we have like mixed blood or mixed DNA, like perhaps then both races will want
Right.
to keep it versus being like, I don't care. my whatever, they're not on this
Mm-hmm.
planet. And it's like, well, actually,
Mm-hmm.
they are now. Your heritage, your lineage lives here because we have these
Mm-hmm.
hybrids here.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
So I've seen a lot of those come through, but it's kind of in that time to get like the universal buy-in. Like, hey, are we going to save this
Mm-hmm.
place or not? Like, come on.
And why do you think that you work with kids so much?
I think for me, it's really that in like a beautiful way, but also if my childhood was validated, known, and like made sense of, but not in like a logical way, but just like could we have known what was going on? I really think that I could have gotten to where I am now
Mm-hmm.
either sooner and
Right.
not felt so
Okay.
crazy. So it's like, to kind of go through my whole life being like, you're so
Mm-hmm.
weird, not that confident, not that whatever. And then 22 years old, being like, now it makes sense. And then start my
Mm-hmm.
awakening. It's like, oh. And then, flash forward like 5 years from that, learn what spiritual
Mm-hmm.
sovereignty is. Oh, like it just would have really
Mm-hmm.
collapsed the gap. And so I think also why I work with children and kind of why that's like such a call, like why they channel me. Like I'm like, why'd you pick me? But they channel me. It's like because they are coming through with so much more of their abilities online, like right away, and they can't wait until they're
Right.
26 to figure it out.
Need to know now. I see.
Or it's like they, yeah, like maybe they'd be put on medications, or maybe they'd be whatever would happen, but it's kind of like, actually, can we segue this process and make sense of things because also a lot of parents of starseeds are really struggling. So they're kind of like, we need help because these kids don't
Right.
make sense to us. And it's like, oh, I got
Yeah.
you. Like, I got you. I can decode, decipher what they need here because it's not what we've seen previously. What we do for other children doesn't work with
I
starseed
see.
children.
And are you finding that
Hmm.
mom and dad or parents or whatever are not of starseed heritage, or they're just like not connected to it, or something like that?
Most of the it's like mostly moms who I work with. They are definitely of origin or like have very strong spiritual ties somehow. But every once in a while you get like a very strong earth soul who like is from earth, is of earth, and then gets to call in these starseed babes, which is super fun. Um, but within that, it's kind of like to like either wake them up. So I've had some like people who are very connected, but they don't know it. You know what? When you've had these readings where you're like, you are so psychic and you have
Yeah.
no idea. Like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness. It's like those people are the ones who have like the super gifted child because then they're like, I don't know what to do with this child. And then they both get to grow
Oh,
spiritually
beautiful.
together,
Yeah.
which is pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And, with as far as like all the different children coming in, have you found with your own children that their like gifts are heightened or anything like that? Don't feel like you have to share about your children.
Hmm. Yeah, like I mean, my oldest has been like talking to spirits since he was like 18 months old, or like since he started to like he'd point to things, he'd get freaked out about things, he'd talk to things, he'd move with things. Like now that he's older, he's almost 7. He'll like talk about. He's like, "There's a ghost. There's a," and granted, I've really beefed up the
Right.
protection around here, so it's not happening
Mm-hmm.
all that often. But he's definitely aware and is like doing so many missions in his sleep that it's like, where are you and what are you doing and what was your spaceship? And he has like names and projects and like things where he's just like, we were doing this on the blah 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 spaceship and the blah, and I'm like, I don't even understand what this means, but like,
Cool.
there's no way you're like,
Yeah.
he's creative, right? But it's like there's no way you're like you're doing these things in your sleep. That's crazy.
Well, and you've made a
um
safe place for him
and
to
then
do
like,
that. Not only are you not shooting him down, but you're allowing him
mhm,
to share what's true to him and what he's experiencing, and
yeah.
literally creating a safe place by protecting.
Right, twofold. Yeah. And the other thing too, like I always tell my clients this, but it's like we don't project onto our kids what's happening, but we like validate and help them make sense of it. You know, so it's like when my oldest or even when my youngest like will see something, it's like I'm not like, oh, did it have this and was it a this and did it like I'm just like, oh, you saw something.
Mm,
Tell me more, right? It's like I'm open, I'm curious, and I'm just gonna validate. Like you saw something. I didn't see it. Like, what did you see? You know, it's like I'm not like
right.
I didn't see it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you saw something? Just curious. And then like they just get to really
Mm.
explore that. Like I'm not like you need to be reading chakras by the time you're 10. I'm like, no, we're not gonna
I'm gonna put
look,
you on
it's
a Netflix
okay.
special.
But when
Go.
right? Yeah, it's like I'm not projecting it onto them because that's the other thing too. I think people really collapse. Like, if you have psychic abilities, then you have to be a
Right.
psychic. And that's not necessarily true. It's like we can weave it into everything we do, every job, every connection, and never ever open a tarot deck or go into
And
the
that's
Akashic
like
records.
truly, I think, where we're headed collectively. Because
It is.
if I just watch my circle of friends, family, as I've developed my gifts and done it professionally, I watch them start to even use language that they wouldn't use before and start to explore their own
Hmm.
clairs and maybe start to explore their guides all on their own. And I really think that that's like just where
Hmm.
everything is heading. And no, you don't have to do it professionally. It's just a part of who we are. And even Shane, he'll like sometimes he'll be like, I had a download. I'm like, it's so cute. But also like very
That's
valid.
awesome.
So I think
Hmm.
that's so wonderful because what it really means is that we are internally referencing and that we are using discernment and that we are
Hmm.
making choices, actions, and so on from what we know to be true within and not looking outside of ourselves at things that are being manipulated to make us do things a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And it really it's like you said it perfectly. It's where we're going. Like
Love it. I'm
it,
so glad.
it's it. It's like as the consciousness rises, like everyone's things are going to come full online and we got to be able to discern. Like if that will be the biggest pitfall to humanity is if we cannot discern between the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual
Mm-hmm.
nuances.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And that takes healing. Really, you gotta look at your shit.
mhm.
Because we all know that like super psychic
Yes, it
person
does.
who's not healed, and you're like, you can't, you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, something that we haven't really gotten into that I think now would be a nice little step aside um, would be so, you had your childhood experiences and the abduction, but you also had your spiritual awakening that came to you in your adulthood. And then it sort of wove back into
Mhm.
your childhood. So, would love to visit that story, the story of your spiritual awakening.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh my, oh gosh, I love it. My spiritual awakening really started when I bought my first house with my husband, and it was just a normal old house. And I just felt like I kept seeing stuff. And like, couldn't, like, at first I was trying to like talk myself out of it. And like, I'd always been able to sense things. Like, I'm like, oh, like that basement's creepy. I know there's things down there. Like, but never tangibly could make anything actually do with it. But then in this house, I'm just like, I see things moving in the hallway. I feel something down here. This is weird. But like, just talk myself out of it all the time. Like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And then we had two dogs at the time, and the one had this. This was like probably the biggest catalyst. Like she was my biggest catalyst in my spiritual awakening because she was so confirming for what I was seeing. But it was like a split level house. So it's like like one level and then like an upper level, but it was all open so we could see it. And all of a sudden she starts growling like upstairs. I'm like, what is going on here? And I was like, okay, like we'll walk upstairs. So we walk upstairs towards what she was growling at, and then she like tracks something like up and on the wall. until it like gets downstairs. I was like, okay, this is weird. So we did that like 3 or 4 times, and then I was like, this is now
Mm-hmm.
creepy. I don't want to do this anymore. There's clearly something in the house. So I went through many different series of like smudging the house, like cleansing, doing all these things, like, and it would be so interesting because she would follow this thing around the house until I would like open a
Mm.
window or a door. So that's where I kind of learned like if you're gonna
Sure.
sage, you gotta open you gotta
Yeah.
open the window, let the smoke out. But it just like would never actually cleanse this thing. It would never leave. It would never whatever. So then the same energy healer who I had already been working with for like other just energy healing, the one who told me like you've been abducted and all these things. So she came out, or maybe this wasn't when she came out because she came out when I was pregnant. Anyways, I had a reading with her and she's like, okay, you have
Oh
six
my God.
portals underneath of this house. And like, and there was like this woman spirit who is attached
Mm.
and bound to the house. So she's like she's here against her will. So then we were kind of like, okay, like because I would sit and talk to her. I'm like, all right, lady, like you can leave or you can stay, but you can't be messing with the dogs. Like you can't keep doing this. Like I don't care what you do, but we have to be harmonious. I need to sleep. I need to this. And I was having like spirits come stand over me in my sleep and like things move and it's just crazy like all these spiritual activity. Come to find out the six portals underneath the house, the lady that's bound to it, we release her, then the
Oh God.
activity got way weirder.
Yeah.
I was like, was she
We
protecting the
we
house
need her
even though
back.
against her own will? Like, like it was so like and then by this point the kind of like messing with the dogs was like on like 10. Like the my female dog, the one who really like made everything real for me, couldn't walk in certain areas of the house or her feet would get
Oh
pulled
my
out from
God.
underneath of her. And it was like you could see nothing, but you could see something
Oh
grab
my
her
God.
feet, kind of like a hog tie.
Yeah.
Like something would like hog tie her. So then I had all these, I used to call them energy bridges. So I'd put like little rugs across, because if it was a rug,
Okay.
it couldn't get her. So it's just, and then my mother-in-law is like, I just think that your dog's weird and she doesn't like hardwood. And we're like, no, I mean, maybe, but
Mm.
like she walks everywhere else, like just fine. It's these four areas. She won't go in this one room. She won't go in this other room. So, anyways, many different, many different things later, many different modalities, many different like experiences, um, what was happening, who was doing it, why were they there. And then it got better. Then I found out I was pregnant with my firstborn,
Mm.
and then it really activated stuff even more because the dog, my son and I had a past life together, and like that trio activated something. So then this spirit could come find us again, and then it was like on onslaught. Anyways, so I had like this really
Like
condensed
how long of a
spiritual
period of
awakening
time was that?
with like
Everything you just described? A year? Less than 2 years. Okay.
less than 3 years. So like 2 years maybe. I mean, like the bulk of the heavy stuff was probably like a year or so. And then it was a little bit better. And then I found out I was pregnant. So it was like, yeah, I'm like 15 to 17. And then it just got
And
like
like at no point were you like,
crazy.
I think I'm gonna move.
We talked about it because I was like, I home birthed and like I was like, I don't know if
Right.
I should have a baby in this house. Like this baby's not safe. So we had the energy healer come out, we drummed the house, we cleansed the house. It held long enough
Mm.
to have the
Okay.
baby. Um, yeah, and then we ultimately were like, we should move. When can we move? How can we move? This is just getting to be too much. Um, about maybe 18 months. No, maybe he was younger than that. Maybe he was like 12, 14 months or something like that after he was born. We kind of got it to like a nice balanced level, but the
Yeah.
activity was still 10. So I just called it my spiritual hotel. Like no matter what we did to close those
Yeah.
portals, like they just weren't closing. So it's just like I just have visitors and they're nice and they're fine and they get what they're going. Like we had but then like the baby would sit and like talk to them or get like stunned by some of
Right.
them and frozen, and we're like, okay, like you can just sleep with us, your room's not
But
safe,
like,
like
while it was so crazy at the same
so
time, like there must be a part of you that's grateful for it because it like activated everything
mhm.
for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. Because it was like, whoa, I sensed all of this and couldn't put it anywhere. And then when the dog started experiencing it, I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, now that's double confirmation. And then when my husband started experiencing things, but also seeing the dog, he's like,
Right.
well, this
Okay.
can't be placebo. There's no way the dog can sense what you're
Right.
sensing because her feet are getting pulled. And then, like, extra once we had the baby, and then things start, it was just kind of like, wait, 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 wait. And then also starting to like harness my own ability
Mm-hmm.
to really move that energy where I was like, oh, I can control a lot of this. I can sense a lot of this. I can feel this, which is around the time I found
Mm.
Nikki Novo. And so that was kind of fun too, because then, in her, she's like, do you know you have a gift? Because you're wasting it. And like, you could spend your whole life doing nothing, but like you also could do this path and you're, like it's up to you, but you're wasting your talent.
Amazing.
And so then I took on spirituality and healing and like really thank God and Nikki that I did. But it was just like such a huge like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened and
Mm-hmm.
this happened. And it's just like boom,
And so was it
segue.
really
Like,
like for you, did it start as just like almost like how do I make this place safe? Does that make sense? Like that was that was where your
mhm.
practice came in using your gifts was like, okay, there's a lot going on. I have dogs, I have a family. How do I manage these hotel guests? Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And then a bigger portion of it, because really it was kind of more in like an amicable sense where I was like, I know that I have sovereignty to just say like leave me alone, but I really didn't have a good control over when, how, why, what in things that were coming through and happening. And it wasn't until probably maybe like 4 years after that that I really started to do like deeper healing work with clients, and then seeing that like the deeper I went into the this work and the, you could say, like high
Right.
profile the things I was removing, the more my family, my house, my pets would start
Okay.
to get interference with. Like nothing was coming at me, but also I'm like, my kids are having night terrors again. Like there's spirits in the house. There's this, there's that. And so I was like, there's a hole here. Like what is missing? Because I can't keep it in balance, and I also can't keep having my family do this. And so there was a period where I was like,
Mm,
do I stop doing this work? Like maybe I should stop
right.
doing this work because it's no longer safe.
But it was really just like
Hmm.
it, new level, new devil. Like with every, as you grew in your gifts, the more you had to like
Hmm.
learn more protection and sovereignty. Is that fair to say?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Protection, sovereignty, knowing that you really can um, question any energy that comes in. So it's like we're very, very hungry and
Mm-hmm.
curious in the beginning of our spiritual journeys to
Mm-hmm.
like kind of
Totally.
take anything that
Yep.
comes our way. Must be a new guide, and we're super excited about it. And then you work with them because I had a few clients too that we really had to kind of deconstruct one of their guides, like manipulating them because it happens. But when
Mm-hmm.
you know that you can just question them, it doesn't happen because they're like, we ain't gonna mess around with you. You know what's
Yeah.
happening. We're gonna go to somebody who doesn't, right? And so it's like learning that and then seeing kind of like how I was actually performing and doing the work. So now in the kind of more high profile, deeper energy healing work, I'm actually doing it long term contracts and doing it in short spurts where I have full strength versus like we're going to sit on the Zoom for an hour where I have to kind of cater to
Right.
like all
That's a
these
lot.
different energies. So I'm still doing my readings, one to one on Zoom. We're doing all of that, but the deeper, if you have something like um, deeper happening, deeper interference, it's
Mm-hmm.
we're like we're gonna work on this for a while. We're gonna sit with this for a few months because that's how we actually get to the root cause of how this happened, when it happened, and then like
Right. It's not
detangle it
just like a
all the
quick
way back till
band-aid
now.
always. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, wow.
exactly.
Okay, so I think this is the perfect time to talk about protection and sovereignty. Um, I think it's really
Hmm.
important because, we've talked about some scary stuff here, and I know, oh, I'll take my brother, for example. When I first started telling him about, like, spirits that I would connect to, or even like when I was doing some mediumship work and connecting to past loved ones and so on, he was like, I'm scared for you. Like he was like, because of movies or from whatever, he was
Hmm.
like, how do you know that it won't possess you and all these sort of things? And it was so clear to me because I luckily from the very beginning, and I don't know if it's just because I've been blessed with generally always working with the light. But from the very beginning, I had heard
Hmm.
you get to set the tone, like you are in control, and to check IDs, something along those lines. And I just like I'm fortunate
Yes.
that I knew that from
Yeah.
the beginning. And so if ever I smell even the littlest bit of, I ask if they're here to work in the light, and if they're not, to leave, and they leave.
Hmm.
So please introduce to us the concept of sovereignty, and then maybe if we can get into some like ways one might be able to protect themselves, like just like the average person interested in ETs.
Hmm. Yeah, right. So sovereignty in and of itself, like on one hand, it's like period. Sovereignty, period. Like need not say more. Like you really are a divine, beautiful soul who has the utmost will over yourself and choice and conviction over what comes in and what goes out, period. And it's like Eleanor Roosevelt. It's like no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And it's like that's really true. No one can make you get hijacked without your consent. It's like where do we consent to these things on micro macro levels? And it's
And
the
may I
same
just
way when it
say,
comes to our
the only
sovereignty.
reason we've ever
And
believed
so to
otherwise is because
yes.
the powers that were have power over us if they think that we like are somehow not sovereign. If we're somehow like, and I see it, with a lot of clients, and I'm like, it makes me feel sad, like that there's no ownership or no, there's that victim, and we're like, we've been fed that
Hmm. Hmm.
for a reason. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we really have, from a collective level, we have been spoon fed fear and really taking on the cloak of victim. And then it keeps you out of reality and out of touch with your true sovereignty and your true ability to say no, to say yes, to say anything. So as you start to go into any of this, even if you're just doing meditation or you walk into like a crowded cafe and you're like, whoa, the energy's funny, right? Because most people who are listening to this and in general in our spiritual community, we kind of start as empath, which is beautiful, but it's also bottom of the spiritual totem pole because you feel everything with no
Right.
discernment for what you keep and what you get rid of. So it's like you get to like, cool, I know how to feel.
Right.
Thank you. And I'm going to rise
Right.
up at least
It's
one
like
level where I don't
abuse.
have to
Yeah.
take it home. Like, yeah, it's like we don't have to just take it all the time. We don't have to do this. So, in that, like just knowing in full truth, in full strength, you always have the right to say no or to say yes.
Yeah.
And
That's it.
period, right? Like
Yeah.
drop mic sovereign. You are sovereign, right? And then as we take that into our spiritual protection, it's also like to notice when fear wants to come in or uncertainty wants to creep in because it has a certain kind of like fog or density to it that almost like lowers your vibration to be susceptible to things. It's not to say you can't be cautious, but if you're like in true fear or in true anger,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually very low vibrations. And then things of lower vibration can like magnetically attract to that. So you're kind of like, oh, when I
Mm-hmm.
forget that I'm sovereign, I allow fear to come in. But when I remember I'm whole, complete, and in
Mm.
full strength, nothing can touch me. Like, ooh, Like, so it's like really getting that from the very beginning can change so many people's experiences of themselves, of different healings, of different anything inside of that. And equally, when you go into a Reiki session, a reading, a massage, you're like, I don't have to
Right.
take on everything their energy's
Mm-hmm.
giving me, but I could receive healing if you want to, right? It's like similar in that sense where you're like, actually, I'm sovereign, actually, I'm this, and I get to just be in my wholeness and in that. Um, a couple things that are really helpful for protection are definitely just spiritual hygiene, right? It's like you brush your teeth, you get the grime and gristle, you take a shower. It's like we do that in our energy because we do have little receptors all day long that take on energy, that take on feelers, that take on things. And if we allow ourselves to keep it, they might make a home within your energy body or within your physical body. And so we, very simply, I'm sure you've talked about this too before, but you just cleanse your body, right? You're just like, oh, we're going to wash it with green light, fill it with white light. You can do it as slow as you want, as fast as you want. I loved your little like brush your broom, or you can like actually like brush and fan off your energy, like anything that's not mine, anything that's not of light, anything that doesn't serve. I make it like a nightly routine where I'm like, what are things I do all the time that I can just habit stack? And I'm like, oh, I put on my pajamas every night. Cool. When I take off my day clothes, put on my pajamas. It's like I take off the gross
Beautiful. That's
energy, I
awesome.
put on
Yeah.
the good light. Like it's beautiful. If you're a daily shower,
So
use the
helpful. And you
shower.
get to you
Water
get to like
so
watch
cleansing,
it go down the
right?
drain. Because the other piece that Michelle mentioned that we need to highlight is
Mm-hmm.
you do have to like as you remove the energy, it needs to go somewhere. Visually, intentionally, but it needs to
Mm-hmm.
leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've been doing this with my oldest since he was like 2, but like grabbing his like yucky energy from the day. It's the same thing, right? But I'm just like, okay, buddy, grab your yucky energy. And so now both my little ones will do this, but we just sit and pluck, 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 and we like throw it in the garbage or we throw it in the toilet because it's like if you have little energetic spiritual beings, they're super sensitive, sensory to all of it as well. So you get to cleanse them and clear them too
Get it out,
and
throw it out. Yeah.
remove it, get it out of here. It also not Yeah, not only does it give you the opportunity to cleanse what isn't yours and what doesn't belong, but it gives you an opportunity to be with yourself, which a big piece of sovereignty
Mm,
is knowing who you are. Like, who am I? What is my energy? And if it's all muddled with everybody else's stuff, it's really hard to
right. Oh,
learn
I didn't even
truth
think about that,
inside
but
of
now that
that.
you're saying it, I'm like, oh well, that's kind of where we gotta go. That's where you gotta go start because I imagine if you're listening to this and haven't fostered a good connection with yourself, you're like, huh? How am I gonna? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, go on.
Mhm. Yeah. And then this one is, I love that you brought this up too, because I kind of forgot the phrase of it. It's something I do, but I forgot the phrase of this, but it is to check ID. So it's just like if you think of like a bouncer, right? They're going to check your ID to get into the club. If you're not of a certain age or a certain frequency or a certain
That's
intention,
it.
you don't get to come into the club. And if you happen to sneak in, it's like, wait a minute, your wristband's not the right color. Wait a minute, you let me see your ID again. And so this is when we speak to this, it's in terms of spirit guides, energies, angels, guides, whoever is like coming into your field. You're meditating, you're sitting in connection, and then you're like, whoa, something's here, someone's here. It's like instantly, you're not like, oh, cool, come on in. Who are you? You're like, ah, nope,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yep.
sovereign and I'm
Yep.
whole and I want to see your ID. Who are you? And then you get to choose where you're like, like, do I want you in here? Do I not? Like,
Right.
what's your intention? You can question these beings. They're not high and mighty. Um, most if they are of pure intent,
Mm-hmm.
they will only be of helpful service. Anyone, any being, anything that comes through that has an agenda that wants to like push you into
Yeah.
things or like run away, get them out of there.
Right. I have no
But not in a
power. Yeah.
I'm so scared you're gonna it's like
Yeah.
it's like you don't have any authority here. You may leave. There's the exit. Goodbye. And rarely do they push back. If they push back, you just say it again. You just firmly stand in your truth, in your love vibration, and they don't want to be around that. They're like, love vibration? We're into yuck vibration. Like,
I can't
like
manipulate
they're
this
gonna run
person.
away.
And just trust that that is enough. That sending them
Hmm.
away is enough because I can hear the questions. I can hear the, oh,
Hmm.
but what if they get in or how is that enough? It is enough. And if you have sovereignty and you trust yourself, you know that that's enough. You know?
Yeah. And certainly like one thing that I've had to change in my practice, and everyone gets to find their own thing, but like I now only
Mm,
do readings inside this office or somewhere that I've fully established
right.
like a pure grid with. And that was different. I used to do work in my dining room. I used to do work on my porch. I used to do work in the kitchen. Like I used to kind of do it
Mm-hmm.
everywhere because it like served me to move around. But
Mm-hmm.
then it was creating kind of vibrational leaks where I was like, oh, actually, that's not like a closed loop. One, for the protection of my clients, so that like the dog's energy, the kid's energy, my sister's energy doesn't get in there, but also for the client energy
Right.
out so that my kids don't pick up on whatever freak because we're moving like you can move the simplest thing,
Right.
but in somebody else's field, it's going to feel like a thorn, right? It's like it doesn't all have to be dark and deep, but it's like,
Right.
oh, we're moving some heartbreak because your boyfriend left you, and
Right.
it's like now my kids are crying. Why are my kids crying? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, you know. So then when you get really comfortable in your routine, in your ritual, in your
Mm-hmm.
practice, you're kind of like, this is impenetrable. I am in my space. This is where I do my work. I put up my grids. I put up my protection, right? And you can do this however it feels right for you, but it's like you could put X's on the walls. You could set a crystal grid
Mm-hmm.
that protects you, and then you're like,
Yep.
I'm good.
Yes.
Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Because I'm a bouncer over
Yes.
there and I got,
Uh,
you're like,
it's
nothing.
funny. I
Nothing's coming
also
through.
only do work in my office or like readings and so on. And Shane, our bedroom is down the hall.
Hmm.
And I was away at one point and he was like, there's a spirit in our bedroom. He's pulling on my foot. He was like, he came from your office. He was like, you let something in, from one of your clients. And I was like, babe, there's nothing more clean and protected than my office. The bedroom, on the other hand, I'm not as on top of clearing the energy and so on. But yeah, I think it's important to do it in all of our spaces too. Like I try to remember to do it for my
Hmm.
car and my workspace and stuff like that because just like our own bodies, the physical spaces that we're in are picking up energy and it's sticking around and yeah.
Yeah, and you get to find like you get to find your rhythm and kind of again that's why it's so important to know your own energy because then when you're like, "Oh, I need to cleanse my car."
Hmm.
It's like people are like, "When do you cleanse your car?" I'm like, "When it feels off." It's like it's not necessarily
Hmm.
like a ritual
Yeah.
thing, but I'm like when it feels off, I cleanse it. When it. And so you're just kind of like when you know your field, then you're like, "Oh, something's off," versus like it's always off. It's always this.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
you got a bit more
Yes.
debris to remove
Well
here
put.
then
And
in that
now
way.
that I like have seen, I
Yeah.
obviously I've known you and I know your story, but to like really see the whole thing, it shows me the evolution of like how you are where you are today and that house you're living in. I mean, talk about ultimate training ground for understanding sovereignty and creating these practices. And then as you work with clients who have, you know, more and more like I'm trying to not say it in a scary way, but they might have more trauma or entities attached to them that you need more protection to deal with, to clear, to help
Hmm.
heal that person. It just all ties together, and I love seeing the like full story of it all.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of the level of risk to taking on the certain amount of work where like some people and it's like we need all levels, right? It's like it's so beautiful that
Mhm.
there are people who
Right.
balance and read chakras.
Yeah.
Like that is where I started and I've evolved to here. And it's like that level of risk has really equipped me to
Right.
have to hold such high protection standards. Whereas, like, I didn't
Totally.
really need it when I was doing chakra balancing only, but man, if I would have been doing it on that level, like, I don't know what could have shifted, but like,
Yeah.
I imagine it would have been like even more potent. But you just get to play with it and really learn. And, you just know that you get
Yeah.
to do it right from the start, and then you don't have to learn the hard
Yeah.
way.
And I
Because I
generally
learned the hard way.
like I said, I generally work with the lights. So my practices have worked, but what's been not working so much is actually clearing my
Mhm,
like work day, like my I like work in the matrix. And clearing that
mm,
has become very difficult to the point where like
yeah.
I now
Yeah.
no longer do readings if I've worked all day because it just but but as
Hmm.
I have been going down the wormhole with ETs and starseeds and so on, I sense that like connecting to one is near and it feels like it's going to be at night. Um, and I feel slightly
Hmm.
less in my power when I'm half awake. Like there's something that goes on in that state. So I've been feeling, I've I've definitely
Hmm.
been doing my normal protection and setting some intentions before I go to sleep. But I had this feeling like maybe I should ask Michelle if there's anything extra I need to do because it feels like it's gonna be in the night. Anything?
Hmm. Often, often we're most receptive when we're not mind busy. So that's why we see a lot of visitations. Even some of my like visitations, kind of like abduction or retrieval experiences, like as of late, like in the last like
Hmm.
year and a half, have been good. They've been positive ones, but it's like I could feel it coming, but they happen in
Right.
the night because we're in that receptive state. It's like the brain waves are of perfect vibration. You're just
Right.
surrendered enough that it's like now's my chance. Because
Hmm.
if I try to come into your
Hmm.
field
Hmm.
when you're
Hmm.
working, when you're driving, like you will miss it. Absolutely. Um, as always, you have the free will around it. Depending on how big the message is, they may still try to come forward, and
Okay.
you just get to choose if the night is the right night or not. And it may
Hmm.
be a long time before they can come back, but if
Hmm.
again, you check the ID, show me the ultimate truth here, and they'll reveal, and then you're like, okay. And like I've had some nights where I'm like, oh, I feel like this is gonna happen. I feel like I'm gonna get taken onto a ship. Like, and then I'm just like, if we're doing this tonight, it has to be quick because I need a good night's sleep. I'm
Totally.
just like, I'm setting the parameters. Here's my hours, and here's my like
Yeah.
conditions to this.
Yeah.
And if you can't honor it,
Lately I've
it
been
can't be tonight.
Lately, I've been like, okay, I
And
really need
like,
sleep this
and it
week,
worked.
so perhaps we can do a soft meet in my dreams. That's what I've been telling them. Like, we can meet in my dreams to begin, because like,
Mm,
girl needs her sleep this week. But yeah, yeah. Um, okay, cool. Thank you.
hmm. Yeah. And you'll like there is I like you will whoever comes through for you is going to be very high vibration. And so there may be like if you do lose a little sleep, like you're going to have such codes being activated, you may have like such energy the next day. And you could just request like whatever codes you give me. Like the integration of them needs to be energizing, not depleting. Because sometimes it's super depleting. You're like, whoa, I got so many downloads last night. I
Great.
need to integrate. And you're like, sleep for
Oh,
4 hours,
perfect.
right? You're like,
Thank you.
this
That
isn't
was
gonna
actually
work.
a really
But
helpful reframe,
you just
actually.
request it or
Hmm. Hmm.
this and that, right? Like,
Okay, Michelle, I think
yeah.
we've covered enough for everyone's minds to digest, hearts, energy fields. Thank you so much. I know that's like a lot. I know I asked a lot of questions and you were so warm and receptive, and it was just really fun to explore with you. Um, Before we wrap up, can you tell folks how to work
Mhm.
with you? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can, I think you're going to put it in the show notes, but you can find me on Instagram at Michelle Marie Larson, and we'll have my Calendly, which will have kind of all the readings that I do intuitive child codes readings. So this is like, I have a spiritual child, I don't know what to do with them. That's the reading for you. An intuitive soul reading is going to be like the reading of your soul, your essence, your being, where you need to go in this lifetime. And that if you want a kind of like, I think there's interference in my field reading, just message me or book the intuitive soul reading. It's like not one and the same, but it will come through in any of them if we need to.
And take it from
And
there.
then,
Okay.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's it.
and like Michelle and I were
About
talking,
it.
you guys will know by
Yep.
working with her, she is multifaceted. Um, and sometimes, like, the best way is just book a reading, and that's how you get into working with a healer, with a reader, with a psychic medium. And then from there, the things that need to be explored, healed, and so on are revealed, and you go down the path. So, okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And listeners, I hope you really enjoyed that one. I just know it. I know you will. That was just everything. That was everything. I mean, nothing is everything, but that was a lot. And